Imagine, just for a second, sliding the key into the heavy door of a luxurious hotel room. You drop your bags, you're exhausted from a long day of travel. The bed looks so inviting, right? The room is dead quiet. But as you click off the bedside lamp, the temperature suddenly drops. The silence is shattered by a soft, deliberate footstep coming from the corner of the room, a corner that is completely empty. So, are you ready to check in? Because tonight we're stepping into the eerie, shadow-filled halls of places where the real terror only begins after midnight.
Welcome to This Explainer. I'm your host, and today we're taking a deep dive into the chilling, undocumented reality of the most haunted hotels in the world. We're going to examine the dark histories and the very real guest experiences that turn these five-star getaways into, well, five-star nightmares. These are locations that have literally terrified guests for decades with unexplained phenomena and apparitions. So dim the lights, listen closely, and honestly ask yourself, do you believe in ghosts?
Let's kick things off with something that might actually feel a little familiar. By day, the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, is this beautiful, majestic retreat up in the mountains. But by night, it turns into Stephen King's ultimate nightmare. Seriously, this very building is so teeming with dark, unexplained supernatural activity that it actually inspired King to write The Shining. During the day, guests are marveling at the architecture, but the second the sun sets, the atmosphere shifts completely. Picture yourself walking down those incredibly long, carpeted hallways at 3 a.m. The whole hotel is asleep. But then, you hear it, a melody, the distinct, elegant sound of piano music drifting from the totally empty ballroom. You follow the sound, right? Pushing open those heavy doors, expecting to see some late-night musician. But instead, the music is playing with no one at the keys. Real guests have reported this exact terrifying phenomenon, invisible hands playing to an invisible audience.
Let's move over to Flagstaff, Arizona, to the historic Hotel Monte Vista. Now, this place has a seriously glamorous history, hosting major Hollywood stars throughout the decades. But deep inside the hotel, hidden way past that elegant lobby, lies Room 305. And behind that door is something far more sinister than old Hollywood gossip. Room 305 is the kind of room that will truly test your sanity. See, guests who check into Room 305 rarely get a good night's sleep. In the dead of night, they report hearing these eerie, disembodied whispers just echoing in the dark. And then there's the room's permanent resident, a ghostly rocking chair. People have literally watched, paralyzed with fear in their beds, as this old wooden chair in the corner begins to rock slowly back and forth, moving entirely on its own. I have to ask you, what would you do? Would you actually stay in a room where the furniture moves by itself, guided by an unseen presence?
You know, even the most breathtaking estates harbor some pretty dark secrets. Up in Canada, the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel is known as the Castle in the Rockies. It's this massive, picturesque estate. But it's forever cursed by the tragedy of the doomed bride. Legend, and frankly countless terrified guest accounts, say a young bride tragically fell to her death on the hotel's grand staircase right on her wedding day. Now, her ghostly figure is still seen wandering those halls, forever searching for the life she lost. She's even joined by a phantom bellman who, decades after his passing, still materializes out of nowhere to help terrified guests with their bags, before vanishing into thin air.
Now, across the ocean in London, England, lies the ultra-luxurious Langham Hotel. But amidst all that opulence, there is one room you absolutely must avoid at all costs. Room 333. Seriously, if you ever visit the Langham, do not stay here. Room 333 is the undeniable epicenter of supernatural activity in the entire building. It's just a vortex of the unexplained.
Why is it so terrifying? Because the Langham is said to be home to over a dozen different ghosts. You're sharing the corridors with a Victorian doctor harboring a really dark past, a German prince who met a sudden violent end, and heavy, unseen forces that physically push past guests in the dimly lit hallways. When you walk the halls of the Langham, you aren't just a guest. You are surrounded by the dead. You can almost feel their cold eyes watching you right from the shadows.
Let's shift gears from grand, opulent halls to something much, much darker, trapped medical spaces. In Eureka Springs, Arkansas, stands the Crescent Hotel. Now, this wasn't always a place of leisure. It used to be a hospital run by a notorious quack, Dr. Baker. Because of the sheer amount of suffering that went on inside these walls, the Crescent has actually earned the chilling title of America's most haunted hotel. The ghosts of the patients, and Dr. Baker himself, never checked out. His spirit is still seen roaming his former hospital, eternally patrolling the halls of his twisted legacy. So, we've explored grand estates and former hospitals, but it kind of makes you wonder, what happens when the walls are centuries old? When a structure has stood through generations of war, plague, and death, the stone itself seems to just absorb the trauma. The hauntings fester, they grow stronger. Let's plunge a bit deeper here and step into ancient fortresses where these entities have had hundreds of years to wait in the dark. Our first stop on this deep descent is Northern Ireland's Ballygally Castle Hotel. It's a gorgeous 17th century castle that houses a genuinely chilling secret. They actually have a designated ghost room. The paranormal activity here is so intensely concentrated, so undeniably real to the staff and guests, that they had to isolate a specific room for the primary spirit, Lady Isabella. Guests frequently report waking up in the middle of the night to this frantic knocking on their doors, only to look out into the pitch-black hallway and see absolutely no one there. Lady Isabella knocks, and then she just vanishes.
If a 17th century castle sends a shiver down your spine, imagine 800 years of terror. We're heading over to Denmark, to the massive fortress known as Dragsholm Slot. This colossal structure has been standing for 8 long, blood-soaked centuries. Just imagine the sheer volume of dark energy, the centuries of secrets, of pain, of imprisonment, all trapped inside those cold, unforgiving stone walls.
The haunting here isn't just some fleeting shadow. Dragsholm actually houses 3 permanent spectral residents. You have the Grey Lady, a former maid who just never left her post, the White Lady, a tragic figure wandering around in eternal sorrow, and perhaps the absolute most terrifying, a former nobleman who was locked away and died deep in the castle's dungeons. In the dead of night, guests still hear his anguished cries echoing up from the depths of the earth. It's a sound that will chill you to the very bone.
Now we cross over to France, to the Chateau de Brissac, another stunning castle-turned-hotel. But, as you're probably guessing by now, the beauty masks a gruesome history. She is known simply as the Green Lady. It sounds almost poetic, doesn't it? But trust me, the reality of encountering the Green Lady is anything but. She's a cursed entity, trapped forever in the grand halls of the chateau. In the dead of night, guests are jolted awake by the horrifying sound of her wails piercing the absolute silence of the castle.
And if the wails aren't enough, those who have been unfortunate enough to come face-to-face with the Green Lady report a sight straight out of a nightmare. She confronts guests right in the corridors, but her face, it's a terrifying visage with dark, empty voids where her eyes should be. Literally, a spectral figure with hollow eye sockets. Can you even imagine opening your room door and seeing that staring back at you from the shadows?
Traveling over to Rajasthan, India, to the Bhangarh Fort Hotel, we encounter a totally different kind of terror. Here, it isn't always about a clear apparition like the Green Lady. It's more about the unseen watchers. See, the hotel is situated near a notoriously haunted, cursed ancient fort. Guests constantly report unexplained, terrifying noises in the dead of night. They catch these quick glimpses of shadowy figures darting out of sight. But honestly, the worst part is this suffocating feeling of a heavy, unseen presence. It's this constant creeping paranoia that you were being hunted by something lurking just out of view in those dimly lit corridors.
Okay, so we've explored haunted mountains, ancient castles, cursed ruins. In all of those places, if the terror just gets to be too much, you can pack your bags and run out the front door, right? But it begs a pretty terrifying question. Where do you run when you're completely surrounded by water? What happens when the haunted structure isn't even on solid ground and escape is physically impossible?
I introduce to you, docked in Long Beach, California, the Queen Mary. Once upon a time, it was this grand ocean liner that crossed the globe. Today, it is a claustrophobic, floating nightmare and an inescapable hotspot for severe paranormal activity. The metal bulkheads, the narrow, windowless corridors, they literally trap the energy. When you check in here, you are locked on the water with the spirits of the past.
And what exactly is trapped on board with you? Well, if you wander down to the ship's first-class swimming pool, which, by the way, has been completely empty of water for decades, you might hear the distinct, splashing sounds and echoing laughter of phantom children playing in the dry basin. Deep below that, in the engine rooms and lower decks, apparitions of long-dead sailors are still seen continuing their eternal duties. The overwhelming feeling that guests report here is utter dread, just the creeping realization that there is absolutely no way out.
We've traveled through some of the darkest, most terrifying corridors the world has to offer today, from the invisible piano player at the Stanley Hotel, to the hollow eyes of the Green Lady in France, to the inescapable phantom decks of the Queen Mary. These really aren't just places to sleep. They are doorways to the unknown. They offer these spine-chilling experiences that completely blur the line between the living and the dead. After everything we've explored today in this explainer, which one would you actually dare to visit? Or would you rather just leave the lights on tonight? Thank you so much for walking into the shadows with me, and hey, stay curious.